Okay, quick walkthrough of a trailer or RV bearing repack. So what I've done here is I've pre-assembled, so I'm just going to take it apart quickly and then I'll go to the tools next. So the first thing you're going to do is take off the wheel, then you're going to take off the dust cap. The dust cap, one of your favorite tools is going to be this guy, which is very useful. Otherwise, you're going to want to use a hammer and a flathead screwdriver and just rotate it around to sort of knock that off. And that's the dust cap. Next, you're gonna come to the main locking nut. Now the locking nut is gonna have a pin that goes through it. This would normally go all the way through it here, and it's gonna be bent back over the top. So to remove it, you're gonna bend it back, then you're gonna pry the pin out. It's a bit annoying. You might wanna use things like a spike and pliers to get that out, and then the pin will come out. Now the pins, depending on whether or not you destroy them in the process, you may wanna get a new pin. They're about $1 each. So something to consider. Next, your nut is now free. So you're able to undo this either by hand or again with the adjustable wrench tool, which is helpful here. So this nut will come right off. What you're going to see behind the nut is a washer. And at this point, you're going to be able to start to shift the wheel to remove it. The washer will fall out. And normally you're going to see one side of the washer is scored, the other side isn't. Next, you're going to have the front bearing that's going to come out. It's going to look like this, and when you reassemble the bearing, you always want the smallest part of the bearing facing inwards towards the trailer. At this point, you're going to be able to take off the wheel. And what you're going to find behind the wheel, which I don't have on there right now, is a rear bearing and a seal. You're going to have a larger bearing that's going to be sitting inside the wheel like this with a seal over top of it. Now this seal is going to be flush in there, and one of the hardest things in a bearing repack is removing the seal, which is where, if you have this tool, which is a seal removal tool, you're able to get underneath where the seal is and then using a hammer pry it away. What I found, even with the seal removal tool, is that you still end up destroying the seal or damaging it enough that I didn't want to replace it. So I found through Canadian Tire, Princess Auto, that you can buy new seals. In my case, it was 1/16 inch for about $4 or $5 each. If I needed to buy the whole bearing replacement kit, it was about $40 for the whole bearing replacement kit. Now, on to packing the bearings quickly. There's a lot of these online, but basically what you're going to do, everything that you've removed, you're going to wipe the grease off of everything. It's probably going to be black. So every part, you're going to remove the grease off, and you're going to re-grease every part of your bearing assembly. The way you pack the bearings is you just roll them down into your hand like this and push the bearing grease into the edges until you start to see the bearing grease come out of the other side. You'll do this on both sides, and then those bearings will be repacked. You're then going to grease the inside of the wheel, the inside of the seal, and basically re-grease everything. And I even put grease in the end of the dust cap to give yourself a reservoir in case the bearing needs it. Quick lesson learned from me is that you do not want to try and punch out the rear bearing by the inner shaft. The reason is when you do this, you're definitely going to destroy the outer seal, and it's basically, if you use a seal removal tool for about $8, it's much easier to get that seal off, and then the bearing will come out just by hand. But if you try and knock it out, it's a lot more convoluted process, and it's going to take you longer. Finally, tools in play here. So this is the seal removal tool. This is the spike that I use. This is the adjustable wrench, which is both handy to remove the dust cap if you need to, or the overall nut. A mallet to get both the dust cap and the seal back on. A tapping block that you're going to need to make sure everything stays straight. Flathead screwdriver to help you get the dust seal off. Pliers. A bunch of these rags, probably you're going to go through half a roll per bearing. It's very messy work. And then you've got the bearing grease itself. If needed, extra cotter pin, have it ready, and probably extra seal, have that ready as well. All right, quick reassembly video here. So I'm just using one hand here. Basically what I've done is I've got the large bearing. It's fully greased and packed. And you can see inside the wheel itself, I've also got grease ready to go there. So I laid that bearing in, small end in first. And then what I've done is I've pre-greased the seal. And then the seal is going to be placed on top there. And then at this point, this is when you're going to want your tapping block to ensure that you can lay it flat. And then you're going to use a mallet or a hammer, ensuring that you can keep it flat so that you don't send the seal in at a weird angle. And then once the seal is flush, then you've reassembled the rear part of the bearing. All right, final reassembly video here. So another mistake that I had made. So basically what we've done here is we've put the wheel on, then we've put the washer on, and then we've put the bolts on. Now, what I've done previously in other videos is just to hand tighten this bolt. I did that before, and then I realized that afterwards, when the wheel was on, that there was too much give, that I hadn't tightened the bolt enough. So now what I actually use is I use these adjustable guys, and I'll send it till the bolt is snug. And then I'll back it off, because you want to keep an eye on where your hole is going to be for your pin. Now the spike was kind of pre-bent so that it goes right in there. But basically what you're going to do at this point, once you realize that you've got the room for the pin to go through and it's backed off a little bit, then you're going to reinsert the pin. Again, I used a brand new pin here. You're going to hammer it down until it's snug, bend this piece back up, tighten it under, so bend it back up so that it's away from the dust cap, and then you're able to put your pre-greased dust cap back on, probably using a mallet or your tapping block to keep that straight. And at that point, you're ready to put your wheel back on and you're good to go.